The meeting is now in session. The time is 4:04 p.m. Roll call.
Mr. Hollingshead.
Here.
Mr. Lara is absent. Ms. Cabral. Here. Mrs. Cordero. Here. Mr. Valencia.
Present. Item, the introduction of interpreters. Tonight's interpreters are Cesar Ruiz and Sandra Carranza. Reading and support this afternoon is provided by Benji Alfaro. Item 4, public comments on agendized items. Dr. McDuffie, do you have any public comments for the agendized? Very much. Moving on to item 5, approval of agenda as presented. Dr. McDuffie, do you have any changes to the agenda?
No, we don't.
So seeing none, may I have this is only a discussion question. Yes. So seeing no requested changes to the agenda, have a motion to approve the agenda. Second. It is moved by Ms. Cordero and seconded by Mr. Cabral to approve the agenda as presented. Roll call.
Hollingshead.
Aye.
Ms. Cabral. Mrs. Cordero. Aye. Mr. Valencia.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 6, study session topic. Point I, Orinda Think Together, Ms. Lojan.
Sorry. I'm going to stand because I feel like I can't follow you. Thank you all for being here today. We're excited to be with you this evening to just keep engaging conversations around Miranda. As you are aware, that's what I'm looking to bring forward this contract. I'm going to just do a quick introduction. Our partners from London. So I'm starting with Jenny Rosa, and I'm going to have Jenny introduce her colleague, and then from there go into, she's got a little presentation to just kind of deepen our understanding of what this partnership means, entails, and then opportunity at the end to put some questions. Okay. So Jenny, I'm going to. My name is Jenny Sosa, I'm Vice President Education Partnerships for Orlando. This is my friend and colleague Scott, who is our Vice President of Education Services, and our other colleague here and Coco Marcel. If you know our founder and president, Robin Marcel, she looks familiar. And her baby girl is also a former teacher slash business owner, and her former life, and now her teacher. Prior to coming to Orlando, just a little bit about myself personally, I was a awesome teacher at elementary and middle school, starting in 05, which is an interesting district, and then went into school administration and got a chance to work both district level as an EL coordinator. You know, one of those districts where you wear multiple hats. Now I'm the EL coordinator, now I'm the data director, now I'm in charge of DLAP. You know, there's all things to do at the district level, and then eventually went into site part. I know it's a crazy life, and I always say for every middle school, every year at the middle school, you should probably have 3 years in your STIRS. And when I was there, out there agreed with me. If you've had middle school experience in life, that just love back into, and then eventually keep thinking around the time. And I'm proud to say that Scott,
very much similar, elementary teaching background, all in Southern California, and did every single job available on a school campus. As an assistant principal and principal, large, a 6 school, and went through some of these processes as a principal with Orlando, then principals exchange, and I love the process. And so when it was time for a change, something that really intrigued me. So me and I kind of make a deal with something. Something I'm so excited to be able to bring to you.
And so we appreciate everyone who's in the room, community members, staff members, board members. It's really important for us as part of this process to have full transparency about who we are, why we're here, what we hope to accomplish in our time together, and to open up the line of questioning and make sure that we get all of your questions answered up front in a way that you feel comfortable to get back to whoever it is that you're going to talk to after this presentation. So very informally ask us questions along the way and stop at any time to let us know if you'd like us to go a little bit deeper in any of these conversations, or if you have additional questions from what we have to present. So I'll just start by giving you a little bit of background about our organization. I actually need to change that to say 27 years, because I'm proud to say we were originally started in 1997, so this will be our 27th year. We've been partnering with schools and districts across the state of California specifically for 27 years now. If anybody remembers when schools were designated as IIUSP, I was a teacher at the time at a school working in an IIUSP. Don't ask me what it stands for, but it's some kind of school improvement label back in the early 2000s. And then if you fast forward to about circa 2006, you had program improvement and you were PI year 1, year 2, 3+, and you had to hire a state approved date provider. We were state approved date providers back then. Now we're calling it differentiated assistance, CSI, ATSI. The label changes, but guess what? The work is the same, and the students that we serve and that we hope to partner with you all to help support with student achievement and student acceleration is very much, the mission is still the same. As an organization, we're grounded in research-based practices that we know to have impact in student acceleration. And we work in a systems approach. I want to make sure that we're very clear about that. We are not a program. We don't come with materials galore for you to purchase. And we're not going to have, you know, all these bells and whistles around toolkits and stuff like that. We are a systems approach, and our goal everywhere that we go in every district that we partner with is always to build capacity along the way and to support your teams as much or as little as you need us to at every level, from instructional assistant to teacher level to principal level to TOSAs that are so important in a district to help make the world go round, and then to your administration, both at the site and the district level. Our goal is to build capacity, support as much or as little as you need us to, and then step away because there's always someone else to go and help and to continue to do the good work. You've got an amazing level of dedication in this community. We've been very privileged to already work locally with Lompoc, with the high school district, with Guadalupe, and we've engaged in some conversations with Orcutt, so we've gotten to know your community over the last few years. And the level of community pride and dedication here is just beyond anything we've ever seen. So again, really excited to be here today and to share some of this with you. And then collectively as a team, you met Scott and myself, but I'm happy and proud to say that every single person on our team has a similar story. We're all former classroom teachers, school administrators, school counselors, district level expertise, collectively K through 12, and everything in between. So everybody has been on the other side of what this looks like from the implementation level and can speak to it firsthand, and basically knows a lot of the pain points that schools tend to experience when they work in communities where students struggle. So we're hoping to provide some expertise around that. We ground ourselves in the mantra that every system is perfectly designed to get the results it currently gets. And if your student achievement is not yet where you want it to be, it's not a people problem. It's nobody's fault. It's a systems issue. And so what we do is we use the analogy of the iceberg. So everything that you tend to see above the waterline are all the student outcomes. The data that's publicly displayed on the dashboard, the test scores, the attendance rates, the dashboard data around A through G for the high school, and everything that can be made available publicly. But because we aim to work at the systems level, we're looking at what it is in your system that are producing those results. What is it that we can get to at the systems level? Is it that are producing the results and are potential barriers, and at the same time, propellers? What can we identify in the systems that are both working and not working currently? There are already great things happening in your district and pockets of success. How do we identify the systems that are producing those successes so we can expand and leverage them, and at the same time identify systemic barriers that are either site-based or district trends? And so that's what we're hoping to accomplish in the components that we're going to engage in as part of this. Okay. I want to start actually, before I get into the details about the partnership, by giving you just a little bit of background. We had a meeting with the high school district. We've been working with the high school district since 2022 now. And the high school district gave us the opportunity to present the systems work to all of the feeder elementaries. And that's where we started to engage in these conversations. Just to give you a little bit of background and highlights around the work that's done so far with the high school district. They've already completed their baseline system study, which is a component of the work that we're looking to engage in this year. They've already done the front-loading modules for their leadership. That includes teacher leaders, it includes school principals, and it includes the district office team as well. And we've already worked with ELA and math teams to calibrate expectations and counseling teams. So teacher voice is very much valued in this process. Counselor voice is very much valued in this process. There are expert practitioners, and if we don't include them in the process in a way where they feel ownership to what they're doing, then you know, the systems work doesn't have longevity to it. It can't fall just on administration's shoulders. And then next year, we're looking to implement their nested data system. So now that ELA and math teachers have kind of defined their instructional targets and put together a roadmap. Next year is the implementation year around what the nested data systems look like for the ELA and math teams. And we're going to begin some work with the social studies and science teachers next year. So this is where we are in terms of the work that we're doing with the high school district and where we're going. The reason why it's so important to have this conversation today is because we've seen the impact of what this looks like, and I've personally lived it firsthand in terms of what happens when you're working with the high school districts, and then you have feeders that are kind of standalones outside of the high school district. So I want to tell you a little bit of background about Whittier Union. And I don't know if you've heard of Whittier Union. It's located in LA County, but it's a district where it's a similar situation in the sense that they had feeder elementary districts, and then the high school had five high schools, comprehensive high schools. And when we first engaged in our work with Whittier Union, it was one of our early projects in 1999. And one of the things that they realized, that they saw amazing progress with the work that they were doing, but they realized very quickly that they were going to hit a ceiling because they couldn't start the work until the kids got to them in 9th grade. So they asked us to engage in conversations with some of their feeder elementary districts, similar to what we're doing here. And in the end, over a span of 10 years time, roughly from 1999 to about 2011, we did engage with 4 of the 5 feeder districts to do this systems work. And we saw such a level of transformation in the entire community that it gives me chills to talk about it to this day. The level of articulation that was happening K through 12 with the feeder elementaries, and the level of ideas that got shared from elementary district to elementary district. Just some phenomenal professional conversations going on between the teachers, the administrators, the counseling teams, all of the above. And so we share that story because we've seen the community transformed. Housing has gone up. I mean, I know it's gone up for everyone, but it went up before it went up for everyone else. Test scores went up exponentially, dropout rates dropped drastically, graduation rates increased, A through G rates increased. We saw all kinds of change, and it wasn't through gentrification. That community is still there. These are the people that now work there, to the point where they had such a high level of success that they got studied by some of our educational gurus, like Michael Fullen went out to study them, and the DeVores, if you're familiar, the founding fathers of the PLCs, right, went out and said, what's going on over here at Whittier Union? And really the magic was them. They were the ones that came up with the idea that we can't do this alone. We've got to engage our feeder elementaries as part of the process to streamline what that vertical articulation looks like. And over that span of time, this is what we saw. From 2002, when CSTs roughly first started, to 2011, this was the time in which we engaged with not only the high school district, but the 4 of the 5 feeder elementaries that were going in. So, like I said, not just test scores, but graduation rates, dropout rates dropped drastically. Everything improved in the community. And so we're really proud of the work that we created there. We call it the zone of saturation because we saturated all the schools with all the knowledge that we had to give. And then we stepped away, and guess what? 15 years later that we haven't been there, they're still best in class. They're still at the top 30. You still have people coming to visit Whittier Union area to see what's going on in their district. And I'll share some data with you. That's more recent data so that you can see how we're doing. Any questions so far? Okay. In terms of more recent partnerships, I want to just kind of orient you on what I have on this slide. So the top dotted line right here, this one right here, is represents the state average for all students. Then the second dotted line here at the bottom, that's light blue, represents the state average for students that are on free and reduced lunch. We commonly refer to them as our SED student population. This is a district that we were working with in Banning. And Banning, if you're not sure where it's located, it's in the Inland Empire of Southern California. Cabazon Elementary, where there's 91% of their student body population is on free and reduced lunch. So essentially almost the whole school. In terms of the line right here, oops, this line, my pointer's not as pointed. This line represents COVID. That's our COVID line. So pre-COVID, you can see how the students were performing pre-COVID. They had a total of 8% gain over a 5-year period. Post-COVID and after introducing them to the systems work, which, by the way, that team at Cabazon Elementary really embraced. The teachers took it and ran with it. The ownership was so strong and they were so bought in that they got this level of result. They took a dip, like everybody else did across the state post-COVID, and then they shot up 26 points in 1 year, just because of the level of dedication from the teachers and fidelity to the implementation in terms of what the teachers had put together in not just creating the plan, but owning the plan as well. And so we were really excited to see that level of commitment pay off in terms of the results that they got with their scores. Did I leave anything out, Benny? I know was near and dear to your heart. That was one of your projects.
Just the work started mid-COVID, right? We did some alignment work via Zoom with the entire district. Then there was a non-testing year, but the kids were back in like a hybrid mode. They started some of the alignment work, some of the what we call calibration of that academic floor happened in that transitional year, and then boom, when everything was back to 100%, it just took off running. Right? So even in what I would call adverse conditions, coming back phenomenal. So.
We also have Mojave Junior Senior High, where we're proud not only of the work that they're doing and continue to do. Mojave's a very Kern County, desolate area. There's a lot of meat there, but you can see here, the green is for the African-American student population, which who knew that they have one of the highest percentages of African-American student population in Mojave, that there are 23% of their students are African-American there, and then 90%, almost 91% on free and reduced lunch. And they too have the 20% growth with the African-American population and 11% with the students on free and reduced lunch. They're doing what we call closing that achievement gap. They're getting there, and they're getting there at an exponentially faster rate than what they were doing pre-COVID. Before the systems work had been introduced to the staff. Again, embracing the process and teachers really kind of owning it and making sure that those kids are succeeding in ways that they weren't previously experiencing. Calexico is a community that's a little more similar to yours, even though it's a border town. It's very high EL population. It's a farming community. Their free and reduced lunch is pretty much almost all of the students, and then you see the same trajectory here. What we noticed was that it took 5 years pre-COVID. I don't know where my pointer went. I don't think it's working. But it took 5 years pre-COVID to get a 15-point growth, and then even after the dip, they went back up 11 points in 1 year. So they saw great gains in terms of student success, and were able to bounce back a lot faster. They continue on that trajectory. They're going to continue to close that gap with their students there as well.
One of the significant notices about that data point too is the flatness of the state average for students currently experiencing socioeconomic disadvantagement, because it is flat, right? That year to year, the average student experiencing socioeconomic disadvantagement made no gains in the state, whereas they made 11% gains in Calexico.
Yes. Actually,
Careful.
the graph says that they are not economically disadvantaged.
This one is the 1% for the state average.
Right.
So there's a state average here that says there was a 1% gain. which is very almost flat. Yeah. Is that what you were referring to? Yes. Yeah, but the 1% compared to the 11%. We'll take the 11%.
Well, no, I was referring to the green.
Oh, to the green.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, because this is the line on top that represents all students. Yeah. Oh, the not economically disadvantaged. And then closer to home, we have Lompoc and Crestview, who again experienced a dip during the pandemic, but then had similar results in terms of the level of implementation at Crestview was off the charts, and they were able to bounce back quite dramatically. A smaller socioeconomically disadvantaged population, but still significant in the sense that they bounced back so quickly post-pandemic after implementing the systems work. And then finally, I'll close with Whittier Union at 76% socioeconomically disadvantaged students, and still to this day, best in class. Now, this is not the CAF scores, but these are A through G rates. So you can see the top line represents the state average for the non-socioeconomically disadvantaged students, and then the socioeconomically disadvantaged students is in the green. And you can see for both populations, they're well above state average, even 15 years post being there. They continue to be best in class. So with that, where do we begin? And one thing that every single one of these schools that I just showed you have in common is that it all started with a study. And that's what we're proposing to do. At the onset of every partnership, we offer what's called a baseline system study, and I'm going to go just into a little more detail about that. What we know, like I said earlier, is that every school has pockets of success. Everyone is working hard. This is not a people issue. This is not a matter of dedication or time or commitment. All of that is already present everywhere we go. But how do we leverage identifying what are those systems that are producing those pockets of success to expand and leverage that to more places within your district? And at the same time, how do we identify potential systemic barriers for the students that are not yet where we want them to be? So as we go through the process of looking at doing a study together, a baseline system study, our overarching goal is to answer these three questions. What is the current student success profile within your district? Who's succeeding and who's not succeeding? What systems best explain that student success profile? Can we identify the systems and articulate that in a way that's helpful to you? And then what can be done to accelerate student success from there? What now? So when it feels like there's so much to do and there are so many things to tackle, we try to bring some clarity around how to prioritize things and how to identify the systems that are working, the systems that are not working. Is it a matter of quieting the system? Sometimes less is more. And then we go to do that in a very organic way. And so I'll explain to you the 4 components of the study and what our approach is and what the implications are for the schools that engage in this process. Okay. As far as the components of the study, we always start with capturing the adult experience. Like I said earlier, teacher voice is very valuable as part of the process because they're the ones on the front lines engaging with the students from day to day. So the very first thing we do is we capture as much qualitative data as we can from classified, certificated administrators at every level, at every school. So there will be staff surveys that go out to everyone. And then there will be selected groups that will be asked to do focus group interviews. Those are about 40 to 50 minutes in person. And we bring a team on campus and we do the interviews there. And we set up a schedule that the school provides for us. So we remain flexible to the needs of the school. And they let us know when they would like us to come. I'll go into the Typically for a school, it would be 3 days of the team being on the ground, the first day consisting of the focus group interviews. And these are for the schools that are going to be selected for the deep dive portion of the study. And then it'll look a little bit different in a modified lighter version for the remaining schools that are not part of the deep dive component. But capturing the adult experience is first and foremost part of the process. Secondly, we will go through and try to capture the student experience. And so we do that in 2 ways. We ask each of the deep dive schools to provide our team with a sampling of students. And the student sampling should be representative of every grade level on campus, of every type of learner on campus. So if you have English learners at a beginning level and at an emerging level, you know, and that have been reclassified and everything in between. If you have students on IEP, students not on IEPs, a high achieving student, a typical student, a struggling student that is in any of those categories. We want to study all types of learners on the campus. The school provides the sampling to us, and then our team farms out and shadows the students. Now, when we shadow the students, we do that in a very confidential and respectful way. All of us are former classroom teachers, like I said earlier, so we know what it looks like when it's not a typical day. If a kid's having a meltdown, if you're in the middle of testing, like we respectfully just don't go in the room because we know what that's like. But when we are there to shadow the students, we're there very discreetly for about 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes at a time. We do it in a way so that the students aren't like, who's this strange lady following me around all day? We're very, you know, they never know who we're looking at. And the school provides us with a picture of the student so we know who to look for. And we're looking specifically, it's meant to be non-evaluative whatsoever for any of the teachers. What we're looking for specifically are how do students engage with the materials in front of them? How do the students interact with their peers in the moment? And how do the students respond to the instruction that's being provided for them? And we're looking to capture the profile of the student. So for English learners at a certain level across multiple schools, what was their school experience? Could we capture the themes of what we experienced from? And the same student that may be asleep in the morning might come alive in the afternoon during an art lesson or a music lesson or a math lesson. You never know. So we do pop in and out even at the elementary level periodically throughout the day. And then at the secondary level, if the kids are changing classes at the middle school, we'll pop in during several periods of time just to see if do they engage differently depending on the materials, depending on what they're excited about, you know, depending on their friends being in that room or not being in that room. And so we look for those kinds of things as we're doing the student shadow. The other thing we offer is student focus group interviews, which are my personal favorite because as we all know, kids have no filter and they will tell you everything from a student experience. And those are also very engaging and telling as well. So we'll capture as much from the student experience through those two components, the shadowing of the students and then the focus group interviews, again, that are provided to us. We do ask that the administrators select the student sampling and that the student sampling is not shared with the teacher just to remove any bias from the teachers engaging with students during that time that they're being observed. Okay. And then the third component is doing a longitudinal data analysis. So we pull 5 years worth of data. We don't just look at a moment in time. We look over time, what are the patterns? We slice and dice it every which way by cohorts of students, by grade levels, by year. And so we will look at 5 years worth of longitudinal data to then triangulate everything with those first two components. We will take the staff component, the student component, and triangulate that with 5 years worth of data in order to produce a report that comes with findings and recommendations in terms of what we found during the course of the study. Our goal is always to do this in the most respectful, confidential way, where we are first and foremost highlighting all the amazing things happening in your district. What are those amazing things happening in your district? And how do we expand and leverage those in a way that's producing more student successes? And then shine some light on what next, what do we prioritize, what are some options, and what are some recommendations. And simply, that's what they are recommendations. Whether or not those recommendations are implemented are completely up to you. Whether or not you would like our support in the implementation of those recommendations are completely up to you. The study in no way holds you to any obligation to do anything more than just get a baseline of where you are at this moment in time and some professional recommendations around what to do next. Okay. We present the findings in multiple settings. We present it to the teams by each individual school team for the schools that got the deep dive. So all of the staff members that were participated in the focus group interviews, we feel a commitment to them to give them the great results of the study, and our team will take that on. You'll see Scott here a lot when it comes time to reveal the results. And then we don't do anything publicly unless we're asked to. So that you know, it's never, ever, ever our intention to put anyone on blast, but we always want you to have the results of your study. Okay. Any questions on the components of the study or any of the information that I just shared? Okay. Now, I want to present to you this data because this is a report that our software team has developed. And this is what we use. I know it looks really daunting and overwhelming. Lots of numbers. I'm going to go through it and just kind of explain to you the method to our madness. How do we begin to have conversations around, for a district this large, we would never ever recommend studying every school deeply. There's no need to. We want to take a sampling, and how do we determine which schools we would sample? And so this is the report that our data team uses to generate those recommendations. So I'm going to walk you through how we came up with, these are the schools we selected for the deep dives, and these are the schools that will be doing the light touch. So let's look at this as my dividing line, the white line in the middle. Everything on the left, and this is all public data. This is not anything that your data team has provided us. So this is all made available to us by public websites. Everything on the left tells us about the community. How vulnerable are the students that we serve? So you'll see right here in this first column, this represents the percent of students on free and reduced lunch, little SED. The second column is pulled from a public website that tells us about the violent crime in the community, and that's based on the school's address. So if you have students that are not, if the school is not representative of the students in that area, because sometimes with open enrollment, these numbers get a little bit funky, but I'm not sure if that's the case here. Is there open enrollment or every student goes to their neighborhood school? Okay, so then it should be fairly accurate if most students go to their neighborhood school. Green meaning there's low crime rate in the community, yellow meaning it's neutral, red meaning it's a higher crime rate in their community that you serve. Then next is the percent of college degrees, not necessarily of the parent community, but of the community at large, again, based on the school's address. The next column represents the percent of English learners in the school, followed by student mobility, which is a new indicator that we've been tracking post-COVID. Student mobility refers to the percent of students that did not complete one full school year from day 1 to day 180. So for schools right here, like Ontiveros Elementary, they have low mobility. Only 9% of the students did not complete a full school year. Where other schools like Linden Elementary had a 21% mobility rate. That meant 21% of the students were only there for a partial year and not the full school year. So that's how you would interpret the student mobility. And then the percent of special education is measured against the state average of special education. And we take all of those indicators to come up with what we call a vulnerability rating right here, where you can see most of your schools land in the red, where this represents the communities that we serve. There's nothing we can do about that. This is just telling us these are the kids that come to us. They come to us already very vulnerable because of the indicators that we're looking at here. So that's everything on the left side of the column. Everything on the right side of the column is now within our control, because now we're talking about academic achievement. What happens during the school day? How are students performing in terms of their CAS scores? So what you'll see here is English language arts CASP scores from last school year as for all students as compared to just for your free and reduced student population. And in your case, because your SED population is so high, they're almost always either the same or similar. And then right next to that, we also have math for all students and math for students in the economically disadvantaged category. If you are a high school district, we would have A through G rates and graduation rates to share as well. So we use this to represent, this is not in our control, these are just the students we serve, and it gives some level of indication. When the students are more vulnerable, guess what? Schools have that much more importance in their life, that much more opportunity to have impact and change their trajectory. And that's a very exciting thing to us. So we look to that to say, does it have to be that students are performing low just because they come to us vulnerable? But you have schools where students are outperforming their vulnerability. And that's a beautiful thing. That's what we're looking to change for all students across the board. So that second rating speaks to the academic achievement, and this is what is within our control during the school day. So we use this ranking to come up with a relative advantage ranking, and then we say, okay, we're going to take some schools from the top, the bottom, and the middle, and that's how we kind of come up with the stratified sampling. So we make initial recommendations to say, okay, we want to study multiple schools from this list based on this data. Here's what we recommend. And then we turn to the district and say, you know your district better than ours. Is there anything you would change about this? And who would you like us to include in the deep dive portion of the study and versus the light touch portion? And so, Mike, do you want to
chime in a little bit here?
Sure.
So we got a recommendation. I think we started with 6 sites that was recommended by Brenda based on this data. I took the data in addition to the 6 sites that are being recommended, took that back to my team, looked at the data. We also focus in on all of our individual sites and the uniqueness of our sites. We wanted to make sure that there was representation of the different programs, our letter sites, because we also want to look at the systems there, see how that is being effective and how that might impact other schools. So we want to make sure that letters was represented, the sites that we're working with us, West Ed. We looked at just knowing that our sites are also organized by clusters. We want to make sure that our clusters were being represented in this study as well, just as we are looking at some of the community pieces. So there were other factors that was not part of this year that was unique to San Benito. And so we made some adjustments and trying to think of some other sites. I think, is it the next slide with the list of schools?
I think it's 2 slides over.
Okay. So we added, for example, we added El Camino. Because that was a site where, like, we know there's a lot going on there and we want to see what systems are working, what else is there that we can't see. And so as we added Jimenez, there were a couple other ones. So we went from 6 to 8 because there were additional sites that we wanted to just really go in, and we wanted a representation of the different programs, the different focus. Geographically, want to make sure that it was represented in the study. And so we did add and made some adjustments. Yeah. We took Bonita was one of the ones that was originally recommended, but we took Bonita off. And the reason for that, it's geographically, it's way out, right? And kids are being drawn in or brought in from different areas. And so I forgot which site we replaced it at, but we looked at the ones recommended. We added some more. Wanted to make sure that this was a holistic study on who we are as San Benito.
And just to be clear, it doesn't mean they won't be a part of the study. Right. They just won't be a deep dive portion of the study. So let me explain to you the difference between the two. So for the deep dive schools, we're looking at a 3-day site visit. So they will host our team for ideally 3 consecutive days: a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, a Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And then the principals will be provided with a list of options to choose from, and then they decide on the dates. Our goal again is to have full transparency about who we are, when we're coming, and it's the rule of no surprises. This is not meant to be a gotcha in any sort of way. So I know we have meeting with your bargaining units set up to make sure we explain everything to them, and that we also have full transparency with the principals. We already had a principal meeting where we were able to kind of give them some preliminary information. Next, they'll get a more in-depth meeting and a one-on-one for all of the schools that were selected for deep dives. But you would essentially be hosting our team for the 3-day site visit. As compared to the light touch schools, we will only visit the campus for a half day. And so everybody gets the staff survey, so that goes across the board to classified and certificated. That survey goes out to everyone. The focus group interviews, we hope to interview all staff at the deep dive schools, where at the light touch school, we only do the focus group interview with the site administrator. And then we ask them to walk us through the campus and highlight all of the amazing things that are happening on their campus and show us their opportunity to show off their campus. And so if they take us to visit classrooms, we'll visit classrooms, and then again, they'll get to select their dates, so there should be full transparency to the staff around who we are and when we're going to be there and why we're there. For the component where we shadow students and do the student focus groups, that will only happen at the deep dive schools and not necessarily at the light touch schools. And then the biggest, the 5-year longitudinal data happens across the board for all schools, but the biggest differentiating factor is that the deep dive schools will not only receive an individual school report in the form of a PowerPoint, but they get the full presentation with opportunity to answer questions, to ask questions and have their questions answered, and to really process the results of their individual school reports. Whereas the light touch schools will be embedded in the district report, but not necessarily receive an individual report or an individual staff presentation. So that's the biggest difference there. Any questions about the deep dives light touch schools? Okay. All right. So there's the list. We've already met with the principals and have started the conversation. Next, we'll have one-on-ones with the deep dive schools so that each principal feels comfortable with the process and knows exactly what's expected of them. As far as the time commitment, because we know bandwidth is always important to us, and we want to make sure that we're not overburdening anybody with that. Teachers in the deep dive schools, we're talking about about 50 minutes for their focus group interviews and about 20 minutes to complete the staff surveys, which I believe they're going to be provided during work time during the school day to complete so that they don't have to do it on their own time. Same for classified, I believe, as well. As far as the administrators for the deep dive schools, it's a little more involved because there are different reports that need to be pulled. And so they will work one-on-one with our study team to make sure that they provide everything and know when we're coming on campus and schedule a 3-day visit. And then for the light touch schools, it's really just that half day that they have to worry about engaging with us for the half-day commitment. And then the biggest commitment is really your data person at the district. Is that you, sir? You're a team, okay. Because the data pool, there will be that CalPADS data pool that's like for the first 5 years, and that'll be the first request. And then as trends start to bubble to the surface, we'll say, can you give us a little more data around this? Can you give us a little more data around that? And so there'll be multiple requests for data team. And that really is the person we engage with honestly the most, or the team that we engage with the most out of this process. I got it. I'm picking up what you're putting down. So that is our approach in terms of bandwidth and what we're requiring and asking people to do. Yes.
I'm noticing that I think there's 2 schools that were on the list for vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Kings and Menace, and they're both on that deep dive school. The vast majority of our schools are on that list, but most of them. So I'm wondering if there's an issue of like overrepresentation there, since the 2 are listed as vulnerable.
Right. We want to study both ends of the spectrum. So again, we look to you all if you want to change out any of the deep dive schools. That was I think both were on the original recommendation.
I believe Coons wasn't.
Okay,
So Jimenez,
Jimenez
Jimenez
was,
K8 and DLI, so that's why Jimenez is up there, right? Because that is a unique site, and we also want to study and see what happens here, that we could also learn from. Can't remember.
the original recommendation was only one of the schools, and then we added the second one, is that it? Okay. So we added the second one based on your district recommendation. Does that make sense? All right. Any other questions before I hit the final component? Yes.
Well, we keep using, ELA and math as our data points. And obviously the high school with the E through G. One of the things that we struggle with is reclassification. And I'm wondering why that's not a consideration of our systems.
Oh, it
Because that's
absolutely will be.
And how, but yeah, but it's, so far it hasn't been mentioned.
Yes.
And I don't see how that's gonna be part of the assessment, because I think that's probably the DLA and math are going down first, and that should be part of it, but the reclassification is probably, for me, one of our most, if not our most important assessments of how our kids are doing.
Yes, English learner progress and
Yeah, because we have newcomers. It's not like we have kids that live here and start here in TK and kinder.
Right.
So there's a lot of transient, movement, and there's a lot of transfers, and there's a lot of kids who are newcomers. So I feel like that's a really important data point, really important focal point for us, is to see how those kids are being served and what systems we can use or that are impactful for them.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. We always include the classified students in the data pool and as part of our focus group to shadow students. But I'm gonna tag Scott to make sure, because he'll be working closely with the study team, that we really look deeply at the classification and your student population.
And even though in that vulnerability index, with all the data slide that showed, that's not represented there, it is a huge part of the actual study and the longitudinal data that we pull. Not only do we look at current ELs, students who've reclassed, students who are initially reclassed, we look at newcomer populations, newcomer programs, we look at the experience at each level that a student is having within the classrooms across multiple sites. And then we actually take a look at student journey data on the road to reclass, and what does it look like in terms of years of progress, in terms of as compared to years in school, and what that looks like within the Santa Maria Bonita system. So all of that winds up being a really robust part of the study.
Just large group is our LTALs, right?
Yes.
And so those are the kids that are maybe at Ontiveros 1 year, they may be at a light touch school the next year, maybe half a year. So that's, part of system assessment is going to be seeing what we can do best for those guys, because they may not necessarily be on one campus all the time either. I mean, there's so many aspects to it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
What's great too is that because we're working with the high school district, we can also tell you what happens to that.
That's longitudinal value, right?
Yeah. And so we'll work closely with, I know.
And that's who we hear from too, right?
Yeah.
On who they're getting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how prepared.
But thank you for bringing that, and we'll absolutely highlight that in the report. So Scott will work with the study team to do that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Why were all the schools are on the west side of Santa Maria? I know that the site plans. Then doesn't really look at a socioeconomic group of the schools, because some of the better areas are on the east side.
Yeah, I think when we went off of the data that was presented.
Yeah, we don't use a
The
map, we
slides,
use the data.
the ones that, the adjustments that we made was really focusing in some programs that are specific at some of those sites. Because the factor we brought in was continue in schools, like, we gotta take a look at that system as well, so, like, Bruce is up there, right? So there's so many factors into trying to find what that good sampling that represents who sampling needed is.
It's just some programs may be available to that side of schools that they're implementing within their own schools.
Right.
That might be beneficial to explore more for the rest of the
And
district.
we'll still have a half day on their campus with the administrator. It won't be as in-depth. And we'll still have access to their longitudinal data that may inspire some additional visits, you know, and so we'll definitely keep that into consideration. Do you have another question?
Did you still have other parts of the presentation too?
There's one more component that's just sort of like a timeline to give you an idea of when things are gonna happen. Okay, all right. So that last component is really, again, just a proposed timeline. We remain flexible based on the needs of the district. So just know that our goal right now is to do as much front loading as possible to make sure that we answer all of the board's questions up front, to make sure that we engage with the principals and make sure that they're feeling comfortable about their role in the process. Make sure they have all the materials that they need to communicate what's going to happen to their staff. And then also making sure that we have time with your bargaining units, both classified and certificated. It's important for us to have open lines of communication with them as well. We want them to feel empowered to answer all of the questions up front that they're going to get. And we'll give them our contact information to make sure that we continue to keep those open lines of communication throughout the entire process as well. So our goal right now is just to make sure that everybody's aware of what is happening and have full transparency around that. Once we're board approved, to begin conversations with your data team, the whole team, every single one of you, to make sure that you know what our initial requests will look like. And then begin scheduling site visits after the dust settles from the beginning of the school year. We don't want to infringe upon the time where teachers are covering all their rules, routines, procedures, you know, all the fun stuff where you lose your voice in the first 2 weeks of school. And then we'll begin to release staff surveys, set up schedules for focus group interviews, shadowing students for all the deep dives and the light touches. So site visits will typically take about 2 months to complete. We'll send the team out to do that, and we'll have the principals select the times and dates that work best for them. And then in November, December, we're looking at giving the team some time to finish writing the reports in hopes that we'll have something ready to present to you by the end of fall. The disclaimer is it's really going to be dependent on your data team and how quickly you get a response to it. At the same time, the second strand that we'd like to propose is just starting some work with leadership development. For us, leadership development is a very important component of the work. We have 2 retreats per year, so one in the fall and one in the spring. New this year, we're starting to introduce a board component because it's been a huge request from all of our partner districts. So currently we're engaged with 14 districts across the state of California, anywhere from right on the border in Calexico all the way up north to Stockton and everything in between. And so we bring all of those 14 districts together. They've asked us to introduce a board component where we bring board members in as part of the 3 days there. And so that will engage in conversations around what that looks like. Again, one in the fall and one in the spring. And then we also start to have what we call admin power clinics, which are sessions for your site and district administrators to start calibrating on multiple things, processing the results of the study, identifying next steps, and then having some calibrating conversations around what that looks like. And again, no obligation to do anything more than just study at this time, but once you receive the results and determine what you want the next steps to be, we're happy to support as much or as little as you need from there. And every step of the way is a conversation. So the system study and the leadership component are the 2 that we're hoping to engage in terms of the partnership for next year. Somewhere around January and February, that's where all the schools that receive the deep dive will get their staff presentations, and we'll schedule that with each individual school so that it's embedded into already regularly scheduled staff meeting. It's not any additional time. And then we will have our spring wrap up, which is the second retreat that we offer for executive team and board members. Continue with the admin power clinics. It's a total of 5 sessions that we engage in, and those are about 90-minute to 2-hour sessions with the principals and the district administrators. So it's roughly once every other month, and typically they're embedded into already previously scheduled principal meetings that the district hosts. And that's pretty much it. This is our contact information. My braces were photoshopped out of pictures. Someday, this is what my smile will look like. Carly is going to be our study lead. She's on summer break and wasn't with us today. She said to let you know though, if she looks familiar, she's also engaged. Not only is she formerly a Whittier Union, we stole her from there when she tried to retire, but she's also engaged with Tier 2 admin credentialing through APSA. So she's like, I work with a lot of the principals in Santa Maria Bonita. So if she looks familiar, that's why. But she will be our study lead, and she will be supporting all of the principals through the study, and Scott will be your designated lead for all things in terms of it. So you have our contact information, emails, phone numbers, calls, text, whatever. Sometimes the next day you're like, I should have asked this. So we like to make ourselves available. Okay.
Yes, and I just want to thank you for this presentation. Is talking with Maiju, and when I initially got here, as we go through strategics and strategic thinking, we talk about strategic retirement. We talk about really looking at what is working and what is making an impact with our students, and what we have that is feel good. People are used to it, teachers are maybe used to doing it, but it doesn't make that impact. Really, it's really good to be able to see from an objective sort of lens, to be able to receive information based on data, as well as that qualitative piece, which I think is so key, to be able to see how we can retire some things that may need retiring, and how we can accelerate student achievement through the really great things that we're already doing here at South. So thank you for that. And this, to me, is a great vehicle for us to move forward.
Linda has a question.
I do. Could you give a couple of examples of the type of recommendations that come from the study that you do?
Yeah. I'm gonna kick it to Scott. I know I have one specific one in mind that you do the study videos more than
There could be an instance where, depending on, because we're talking systems level, there could be things that the district may consider as must-dos, right? District initiatives, things that every site can or probably should be doing. And from a drive-by perspective, they may appear to be doing it all at the same level, right? Or all with the same oomph, or with the same zeal. But then when you get down into the actual weeds, you see how deeply implemented in some, it may not be as deeply implemented in others. So there's nuance to that implementation, which, without knowing the nuance of what that implementation means, it's hard to explain why outcomes at one site may be higher than outcomes at another, without having kind of a deeper level of understanding of what it looks like. How did it land? How is it implemented? And really, where the outcomes are closer to where you'd like to see them, what are they doing differently with the exact same approach that's not getting the outcomes at site B and C? So having kind of peeling back that layer is something that, as an example, comes up sometimes. And then you plug in whatever program that is, but that's common.
what I will say, similar to what you're saying, is that we are fans of quieting the system. Sometimes less is more. And so we get to school districts and they're like, well, we did this training, and then we did this training, and then we did this training, and we did this training, but I only got 2 days on this and 1 day on that, and I'm not sure if, I'm supposed to be doing what the publisher said or what the consultant said, and, we get there and there's what we call a Christmas tree effect. There's a lot of bells and whistles, but nothing's being implemented deeply. And it's making the teachers crazy. And some may know, some don't know, and some are just overwhelmed and they don't know where to begin. And so sometimes the recommendation is to try the system and to select a few, rather than try to do everything. Let's hone in on a few, and let's create a system that allows you to test out whether or not it's having impact if a system is not already in place. Does that make sense? That's a very common. Everyone's trying to do everything all at once. It doesn't always help. Yes.
One of the critiques that I can hear, especially from teachers, is, oh, this feels like another flavor of the month or flavor of the year type of thing, right? This year is going to be Linda, next year is going to be this new kind of program or approach. So how do you kind of address those concerns?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's ultimately up to how well we empower the teachers to own the process. Because if it could feel that way if it's something that you're not engaging in, that you've got some of the conversation, but not all of the conversation. For example, I know we've been asked to do like summer institute sessions or summer sessions where not everybody went, but some team members went. And so then it comes back feeling a little disjointed, like, well, I didn't agree to that. You know what I'm saying? And it was because not everybody was at the table. The more we can engage in conversations where everyone's at the table, the more they're the ones that are driving the process, and the teacher voice becomes stronger and stronger. And so it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight because it takes time to understand the system. Well, first identify the systems, and then if we move forward with the process, to understand the systems that they're being introduced to and to make them their own, quite frankly, and to take ownership. And then once you start to see that and experience the level of impact and success in terms of everything that we're doing, that starts to be very exciting. And it starts to be a little bit like that diet plan where it's like, oh my gosh, you got really good results. What are you doing? And then they want to know more. So it's an organic process. There's a learning curve to every phase of the work, but we engage in every question that we're asked. We welcome all of the conversation because we want to be able to talk people through the process. And I would say that the high school district is in the very early phases of identifying of creating the foundation. So they've not yet got to experience the success of the fruits of their labor. So,
if I may add, the idea that the process starts with a baseline study that is really deeply rooted in teacher, counselor, admin voice is different than a lot of approaches that they may have experienced before. The reason why I say it's different is not necessarily it's a different approach, but it's also different in the way that it feels when it comes time to do things, to advance initiatives based on that study. Because what they'll find, if you've ever been through a WASC or an audit, those feel largely punitive. They call out things that need to be fixed. And rarely do teachers feel, counselors feel, classified staff feel a connectedness to that, to those findings, to that data. It just feels different. What you'll find is that initially, without knowing what to expect, there may be a little angst around, oh my gosh, we're gonna get an interview and there's a survey, and what does this look and feel like? But every single time when we get to the reveals of the study, and we talk about findings and recommendations, the angst goes away because teachers, counselors, admin, constituents see the things that they shared as themes in the study. Things that they've lived, things that they've experienced, things that they've seen for years, things that especially in a community like Santa Maria, that their grandchildren and children and cousins, right, have seen, that they've experienced. And so it's almost it honors that position too, because it's such a large, it's a third component of, it's a 1/3 of the entire study, is that voice, that sharing out. So whereas sometimes you may feel like you're layering on top of someone else, or you're saying this is a compliance box, we need to do this, check the box. This comes from a different place, because they end up seeing themselves in the results and in the findings and in the recommendations. It's a much different, dare I say, vibe to other experiences.
And I would argue that, that's why do we do teacher PD? Absolutely, but we never start with that. We always start with the study, because we want to honor the work that's been done. We want to identify what's already working, and we don't presume to know your community or your district or your teacher's school and school needs. And so we start with the study first to help us have a more fine-tuned lens on how best to support moving forward.
And that's what gives it legs and longevity.
So the recommendations, the findings and recommendations will essentially be applied across the district?
No, they're simply recommendations, then you
Right.
determine. Yes.
But I mean, it's, if we take that information and want to take some kind of action, is it fair? I'm thinking yes, because of the similarities within our schools. That, you know, if we move in a direction, take something off the plate, or more closely monitor something that we've implemented to assure that it's being implemented to the same degree across every school. We will be able to do that, and then how long do we continue our work with Orenda?
It's really up to you. So we look to your leadership for guidance and direction around providing support for as much or as little as you'd like us to. So at every phase, it's a conversation around what you need, and we ground ourselves in data to determine here's the need, here's the recommendation, and whether or not you would like our support, or whether you're going to take it and run with it on your own. I can tell you from experience, we've been in districts where we've studied all 29 schools, similar to what we're engaging in here in a stratified sampling. And after the study, they said, okay, we only want to start with these 4 schools, and this is why. For whatever reason, because there was a need, because they wanted to, because, you know, the data showed a different need here than it did in the other schools. And then we've been in places where they're like, no, we want to start district-wide with everything. So we look to your leadership for guidance around what the next steps of the work look like based on the findings and recommendations, but ultimately the decision is in your hands.
I'll just add, Linda, just to clarify that the contract that I'm bringing forward tonight is just for the baseline study. Right. So once we get that report, depending on what the recommendations are, our hope is that that's going to clarify where the direction that we need to take. And at that point, we'll determine what shifts we want to do. And if it requires Orenda to come and support us in that work, we'll engage in that conversation. If there are things that we can do on our own without engaging Orenda, we will move forward with some of those recommendations on our own. The baseline data will also serve the purpose of the community schools, for example, requires us to do a needs assessment. So from this, we can gather that data to help inform what does community school look like for us. Thinking about our CSI and TSI schools, kind of that needs assessment as well, and having that baseline data to help us inform how do we move those schools forward as well. Yeah. So this baseline study will serve multiple purposes.
We quite commonly have our partner districts take the reports and then copy and paste it into their school plan, into their LCAP, into their plan that they have to submit to the county for differentiated assistance, for ATSI, for CSI. So it covers a lot of different bases in terms of a needs assessment, because that's a comprehensive study that we're providing for your district. And then at the same time, what happens after the study is solely up to you all in terms of, you know, based on the results, then we look to your guidance around what that looks
I'm
like.
just gonna say 30 seconds. Part of this is building the capacity of the whole system, including executive cabinet, including myself, with some of the retreats and some of the dialogue to have with the other districts that are already a part of RENDA. And I'm very glad to hear that there's a board component that will be a part of that. So we, as a governance team, can also build our capacity in this work to decide whether we can pilot some schools or decide whether we, what we do together, we would all have built our capacity around this.
Yeah, that whole day of learning that we had with the high school and the 3 feeder elementaries, Santa Maria High School District had 2 of their board members spend the whole day with us. And that was so heartwarming just to see them engage at that level in the process, to be able to experience it firsthand, what it is that we're sharing. Yes.
Something else in those specific for students, for classified, and parents also, which I think is really a critical component to get a more picture. Because I saw that it was optional among some of the things that are sometimes happen, but to me it would be essential to make sure that we get those messages.
Absolutely, yes. We leave it as an option because not all districts opt to include the parent component, but absolutely, we send out surveys to the parents, and we don't traditionally do a focus group, but we absolutely can if you'd like us to. And then you just provide who you want us to speak to, and then we can include them in the conversation as well. Okay.
I think that's pretty much our time that we have, unless there's any quick last minute questions from the board or comments.
And they have a copy of the PowerPoint, so feel free to share the PowerPoint itself, because I know some of the data was minuscule in there. I can't see anything without my glasses. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Item 7, adjournment. There being no further business before the board. May I have, what's up? May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
This is a step.
Second steps.
May I have a second? It is moved by Ms. Cordero, seconded by Mr. Lara to adjourn the meeting. All in favor?